I now have the honor to invite Her Excellency Sylvia Bambala Chalikosa, Minister in the Office of the Vice President of Zambia, to deliver an address.
His Excellency Uli More, the President, Federal Government of Switzerland, Ms. Mami Mizoturi, Special Representative of the Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction, Your Excellencies, Heads of States and Governments present, Honorable Ministers, Heads of intergovernmental and other organizations, distinguished delegates. Let me begin by thanking the Federal Government of Switzerland for the warm welcome and hospitality accorded to the delegates, and also for hosting the 6th session of the Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction. I am honored for being accorded this opportunity to deliver an official statement on behalf of my government. Fellow participants, it is important to note that this year's platform again provides an opportunity for us to take stock of what we have done since the adoption of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, especially in the last 2 years. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, allow me to mention that Zambia still continues to be at risk of a number of hazards, especially climate change-related hazards, such as drought and floods. Included to this are pest infestation of crops, disease, fires in public places, and road traffic accidents. Climate change and variability has equally made it more difficult to predict the behavior of hazards. For example, currently the country is experiencing prolonged dry spells that have affected more than half the country, while the other part has been affected by floods. This is directly threatening the food security situation, especially to the vulnerable who may not be in a position to buy food for themselves. Therefore, the need to enhance integrated disaster risk management is of paramount importance if Zambia is to protect its citizens and assets from the adverse effects of disaster risks. In order to deal with these risks, the country has put in place several disaster risk management measures or strategies which are aimed at addressing Target E of the Sendai Framework. Distinguished delegates, since the adoption of the Sendai Framework, my government, in collaboration with other stakeholders and in line with the global aspirations, has domesticated the Sendai Framework through the development of the National Disaster Risk Management Framework 2017 to 2030, which was launched this year by myself on behalf of Her Honor, the Republican Vice President of Zambia. The framework draws its legal and policy authority from several documents, which include the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015-2030, the Disaster Management Act of 2010 of the Laws of Zambia, the National Disaster Management Policy, and the Disaster Management Operations Manual. Other documents where it draws its strength are the Africa Programme of Action for the implementation of the Sendai Framework 2015-2030, the Southern African Development Community Disaster Preparedness and Response Strategy Fund 2016-2030, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change 2015-2030, and the Sustainable Development Goals 2015-2030. Distinguished delegates, the National Disaster Risk Management Framework also feeds into the 7th National Development Plan of our country to ensure policy consistency. The aim of National Disaster Risk Management Framework is to enhance the implementation capacity and capability of the country to significantly reduce vulnerability and contribute to resilience and sustainable development, in particular looking at the plight of women and children, who are the most vulnerable when disasters strike. Through this, the country intends to have a substantial reduction of disaster risks and losses in lives, livelihoods, and health in the economic, physical, social, cultural, and environmental assets of persons, businesses, and communities. The framework outlines the guiding principles, priority areas, annual targets, outcome indicators, programs, and activities. To facilitate the monitoring of the global targets and indicators in the Sendai framework, which are well articulated in the national framework, my government is utilizing the disaster loss database to capture information relating to economic loss, affected people, damaged critical infrastructure, livelihood, disruption, mortality, early warning systems, and investment in disaster risk management, just to mention a few. Further, in order to monitor the implementation of the Sendai framework, the country has been part of United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction online Sendai Framework Monitoring System, launched in March 2018. This online monitoring is being done in collaboration with regional economic commissions such as the Southern Africa Development Community, SADC. The country has so far held 2 workshops aimed at populating the Sendai Monitor and Disaster Data Loss database. My country is also working with African Union in implementing the Program of Action for the implementation of the Sendai framework. Distinguished delegates, despite these achievements, the country faces challenges which include data availability in a usable manner, inadequate insurance cover for hazards such as floods. In this vein, I would urge cooperating partners, especially at regional level, to set up a fund to assist affected countries, especially with lessons learned from Cyclone Idai, which affected a number of countries in Southern Africa. Distinguished delegates, in conclusion, I would like to state that my country is fully committed to the implementation of the Sendai framework together with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Allow me, Chair, to request cooperating partners, both international and continental, to consider disaster risk reduction programs and activities in our country when providing support. With these few words, Chairperson, I thank you.